Okay, so welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue. We're gonna go ahead and jump into a function. We'll need to create it. It's the create script. And once again, my microphone, I don't know, for some strange reason for these two videos, it just went and it didn't actually record any sound, so I'm just recording the sound over the video. Anyway, we are creating this function which we need in order to create our PowerShell script. So what I am writing now, this is the output file stream, and we are creating the file descriptor, which will be called script. And into that file descriptor, I am passing two functions. One is from our input-output header, which is get our path, whose return value will be concatenated with the script name. So we will get the path and then we will merge it with the script name, and that will be functional, hopefully. Anyway, we're gonna now jump and actually make sure, we'll just try to figure out if the creation of the file went okay, hence the if statement. So if to see whether it went good or not, it just basically provides return value true or false. No, nothing strange about that. It's very handy to have these checks throughout the entirety of the code because, yeah, unexpected things can happen, and it's always good to be prepared. Next up, we will actually output the entire script to the file. So we are trying to create the file, and immediately after we have created the file, and now we have outputted we have actually outputted the entire script to the file, and now we are actually checking whether the writing to the file was okay. So keep in mind that the script is the file descriptor, not the script itself. If that went fine, if nothing bad happened, just basically close the file and return true. That's it. No big deal. If it didn't go fine, well, then return false and notify us of that. So that part will be extremely useful in error checking way, so to say. Next up, we will create the timer, mtimer, which will be the mail timer. This will be our timer, which we will use for sending mail of type timer. So this type is mtimer is of type timer, which we have created in the header timer.h. Yes, I am aware that I have said the word timer like 100 times, but I don't know, it just is like that. And we also made it a global variable so that it would not die at the end of the function. This is done because we will need to reuse it again if the mail sending fails the first time around. So we need to ensure ourselves to a very significant extent that if something fails, if something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen, we are able to actually repeat the process. I'm actually not sure why I've shown this function one more time for whatever reason, but hey, if the mail sending fails, it will attempt to send it, but if you don't have internet connection, or I don't know, if somebody explicitly forbade that in the firewall or something like that, I don't know, then it will fail. And up above, the create script that I am demonstrating now, well, basically it actually needs to return. It needs to happen in order for us to be able to even send this mail, because we are going to create the script by outputting a string into a file, and then we are going to invoke that particular file, which will be a PowerShell script, in order to achieve the sending of the email. That's why I've shown it a lot of times, just to make that point. Next up, we will create a function SendMail. Now, SendMail will take 3 arguments: subject, body, and attachments. So we already went over in terms of what sort of parameters to the function are these, references, and so on. And of course, you can already recognize what they are by just looking at them. I mean, subject, what do you think that is referring to? Body, again. And at last, we have attachments. So we are formulating our email. Mails need to be in a certain form, and you have a subject, body, and an attachment. If you try to send a mail, just take a look at it. You will see that it's pretty much the same. So here I'm going to type in the Boolean OK. This will be basically, that will just be used, Boolean OK will be used for a lot of testing within this code, because mail sending is kind of tricky. You don't know whether it will succeed or not, whether we will be able to actually, we will check if the script already exists, and then we will use Boolean OK to verify whether the file exists or not. Is it okay to create it, etc.? Do we get some error codes, and so on and so forth? You will see when I actually begin writing it. It's far better to actually see it than to just listen to my dry explanations. So again, we will use mkdir from our input-output header. I made an error here while writing this. It's mK dir, but I will do the corrections in the next video, so no worries. I will go one line at a time. I made 2 or 3 very small mistakes, typos. I will show you later on what the problem was. So we are going to we're creating our directory, and we want to see whether we have succeeded or not. So therefore, we are going into the if statement, and we're going to return -1. -1 means that we will not be able to create a directory. These arbitrary values here are extremely useful to us. Why? Well, remember how I mentioned that there will be a log file for the keylogger? 2 log files, actually. One log file will be for all the recorded keystrokes and other things, and there will be another log file which will be used for debugging. So -1, -2, later down below, all the other error codes that will be returned, they will be placed into that debugger file, which later on we will be able to pull with the reverse shell, which in all likelihood will be implemented into this keylogger. And there you go, another error that I've made. It's supposed to be script underline name. Anyway, enough of that. That file will be extremely useful to us, the debugger, but the debugging file for debugging, let's put it like that. Anyway, down below we have a string, which is scr path. And again, we are taking the path, and we are taking the string name, and we are concatenating it into one long string, which we will need if we want to actually do anything with that script. We will need to know the path to the script and the script's name if we want to even have a slightest chance of actually executing it. So I seem to have missed a function here, but I'm pretty sure that I've remembered to put it in like a couple of seconds, and then I have written it down below. Now, what we will need to do is simply check if the script exists, and I am begging myself to actually write it, that I didn't make an error there. Good, I didn't. So we will actually check if the file exists by using the scr path as a parameter to this function, and if it does not exist, then we are going to go ahead and create it. If it does exist, then there is no need to actually do anything in this regard. It's already there. These are one of the problems when we were starting the keylogger multiple times. The script was already there, and then a new script attempted to be made, and some problems were encountered there. But oh well, no big deal. This is how they were solved. Now, the next one, if the creation is checking whether the creation was successful or not. Well, it's checking if the creation was actually unsuccessful because you have exclamation mark, which is basically not, and then the Boolean okay. It's just a check that we are performing to see if the creation of the file, of the script of the file was actually successful or not. And then we have, if it was not successful, please return error code -2, which again will be stored into, which again will have the ability, there is a possibility that we'll be able to actually store -2 into our file for debugging. And now down below, I'm about to write the most hated piece, one of the most hated pieces of the code in this keylogger, which is basically just the string which will be more or less used for invoking the PowerShell script. Now, PowerShell, by default, will require admin privileges to execute a given script, or at least it will require some sort of user action to enable the execution of these scripts. We will need to find a way to bypass this. And then there was a question in our minds, how on earth are we going to bypass this? Fortunately, there is a default flag which you can pass to PowerShell upon calling, when you call a script, you can actually pass this flag, which goes something like this: execution policy bypass. Believe it or not, that's actually it. When you pass it, you no longer require admin privileges, and the script runs without any problems of whatsoever. I know, right? Weird, but so it is. Although I don't think that you can use... I actually wonder what else can you use execution policy bypass, and what else can you do with this? I'll give it a shot and I'll give it some thought, but I do believe that it's only for the execution of PowerShell scripts. Anyway, what I am doing now is I am placing this long string into, well, I'm actually formulating a string param, which meaning parameters, just a shortcut. And it will take me a while to formulate it. As you can see, I am passing two flags to the script. The first one is execution policy bypass, and the second flag is file. And now I need to place a path, and then I will add a subject, and then we will have the body and the attachment, and all that will be added. And what will come into play here is the string replace function from before, which we needed to create in order to make it possible for us to actually include some sensitive characters like quote marks and so on. So we needed that in order to be able to insert such things into the script itself. Otherwise, this would look really, really, really weird. There should be 4 lines in total. And to actually launch an external PowerShell script, we will use shell execute ex function, which accepts a pointer to the structure, which we're going to formulate down below in a minute or two. And I'm just waiting for myself to basically finish writing this boring piece of the code. You know, when you rewrite this piece of the code, please be very careful not to make any misses. It's very sensitive. So if you miss a quote mark somewhere, if you miss a back quote somewhere, this will not work. So be very, very, very careful when rewriting it. Also, there will be like 4 lines, as I said, so it's not that long. Just look at it real hard and real long. And when you create your own code, please be careful with it. Otherwise, you know, if you miss a small thing like backslash, backslash, or a quote mark, then, I mean, no errors will be actually reported to you in all likelihood, because still it is a legitimate string, but you will have a logic error which you will find very difficult to figure out where exactly is it located, and that's not going to be a very happy thing. I'm slowly beginning to lose my voice today, as I am actually hoping that I will be able to finish the version 1 of this keylogger today, at least the casting portion. But it's been a hell day. One thing after another went wrong, and I'm sorry that I'm like telling you this right now, but I really don't have anybody else to tell it to at the moment. I need to vent some steam, I guess. And I'm losing my own nerves watching myself do this. I do not understand why it took me so long to actually write this, but I guess I took my own advice here and wrote it really slow and compared it to the notes on the second screen in order to make sure that it's all correct, that I haven't missed anything. And you see, I actually missed a line, and then I went back to it or something like that, and then I continued on writing in the line below, which was kind of weird. I actually can't believe that I managed to rewrite that from the notes in a correct fashion, but I did anyway. A more boring portion of this tutorial, but do not worry, it will be over pretty soon. There is just one more line after this one, which should be a bit shorter than the other ones. Well, a mid-sized line, I would say, and then it's gonna go away because we need attachments. Attachments will be very important because we will place the encoded files, encrypted files into those attachments, which will be passed to the mail, and then via mail, they will be shipped over to us on the other side, where we will download them and decrypt them. That is how we are managing to pass the files from one end to the other. We're using attachments. Just readjusting my position, so that should be it. I need a plus and some quote marks and a backspace, and that should be fine. And then we can actually jump into the building of flags for the execution of our shell, because we need a lot of settings there in order to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Now, the first thing that we're going to do here, that I am about to do, is create the shell execute info. Well, not create shell execute info. This is a Windows API. This is from Windows API. But what I want to do is create a structure called shell execute info. And immediately after I have created it, I will need to define its size. That will be a very important part of this. So pretty much the next maybe 10-15 things will all simply be from the Windows API itself. We're just pulling well-documented functions. And we are giving them certain values, certain flags, which we will need for the execution. You will see what each one of them means one by one. So this one, for example, that I'm writing now, this is going to set the size of the structure. And later on, we will be filling the structure. Well, we're filling it now, but yeah, not filling it, defining the size, basically. Okay, place a semicolon. There we go. So next up will be shell execinfo.fmask. This we're going to use in order to prevent the PowerShell from terminating immediately. We want to grab a few things like debugging info. We want to see how it actually behaved before it is actually closed. So we are effectively preventing the process from closing for those purposes. There is really no other reason. Arguably, no other reason. Everything I say, please do take with a grain of salt. I am really tired. It's been a long day, and on top of that, it's been a hell day, so to say. But hopefully by the end of today, on the 10th, I will be able to pass this to Udemy for approval in terms of video quality, etc. And we'll see what comes out of it. The next one will be a handle to a window, which will be null. Write it. Yes. Go ahead. No, I was explaining something, talking to a microphone that wasn't listening. But anyway. We're not actually going to have a window here. When PowerShell executes, it will not open up a window, which is very important for us as we want to maintain a certain level of stealth, a good level of stealth. Therefore, I've actually skipped it. Wow. Okay, no big deal. I'll just write it in the next tutorial and I'll show you the handle in the follow-up.